Walk with me. So I've had two individuals I respect, I listen to a lot, I learn from, I grow from. Each share a version of a very similar story recently. And both times it grabbed me, it moved me, it made me think. And I want to share my version of that story with y'all. And it's a story of an elderly couple. They were later in their life, late 80s, had lived a very, very full life. And on a tragic day, there was an accident. And both him and her were in a car, and they didn't make it. And last thing they remember is the oncoming car coming at them, and the next thing they realize, they're up in this mystical place. Clouds and lights and music. And they enter the gates of what they're figuring, oh, this must be heaven. And there's an individual there that welcomes them and hands them both a document with their name on top, their full name, the date they were born, their final date on this planet. And on each of their documents, they start to look and they start to read. There's a list of what looks like achievements, milestones. And the elderly man starts reading down his, and it has things like a college and a university, milestones on a career, milestones about being a great father, a partner, and keeps reading, and he starts to get confused because, it looks like his story, but he starts to see all these milestones of this business he started, this movement he created, these people that were impacted. He looks at his elderly wife who's looking down her sheet, and it's similar milestones of early life and decisions made and how great of a mom and friend. How then it got into a book that she had written, a message that started to get out, an influence she was able to build. All these people that were impacted by her ideas. And they look at each other confused because there's these papers with their names and their dates that seem like their lives, but these weren't their milestones. And they don't know what to do. They get a little uneasy. They're, at the gates of what appears to be heaven, and they think there must be a mistake. So they don't want to lie. They don't want to go in under false pretense or somebody else. So they both decide to go back up to the person that handed to them, and they go, "Oh, thank you for this. We appreciate these. These are our names. These are our birth dates. This was the last day that we can remember. And this looks like our life, but this, all of these, they're amazing, they're inspiring, but they're not us." And the person looks back at them and says, no, these are for you. Well, what are all these milestones, these markers, the achievements? And look back and say, well, that was the person God created you to be. That's a list of what you were designed for. That's a list of your potential. And that story, that idea, hit me hard. Whatever your belief system is, whatever God or maker or some greater meaning you believe in, or ultimately, when it's all said and done, we end up meeting and having that first conversation. What if, in that moment, you get to see everything you were created to be? Your potential. You're meant to. You guys, I want to talk about that moment, and more importantly, that feeling. Because in that moment, there's only really two feelings that someone could have. Someone could have a, wow, this is my life. I gave it all. I left it all in the field. I did my best. I pursued my potential. I lived my meant to. Or a giant, heavy feeling of regret. And I want to have that conversation today, one about regret. And it's going to be one I know that hits hard, because I know it's something that all of us as humans face frequently, maybe even daily in our lives. Before we get into that topic, I want to know who's by my side today, who's to my left, who's to my right. Don't be shy, say hello below, drop a flag where you're from, let me know where you're from, tell me something new. Welcome back for those of us that walk together. I love our time, I see you. If you're new to the crew, welcome. We walk together most weeks around the same day, same time live, have inspired conversation. You can catch a lot on the podcast, Alive by Design, on all podcast platforms. Go subscribe. And we've had some good ones. And the only thing I ask if you're new to the crew is you don't be shy, just as if we were walking together in person. Collaborate, participate, share some feedback below as we talk about a topic that applies to every single one of us, right? And maybe a topic that wouldn't be a normal conversation for any of us. I don't know a lot of people that talk about regret. You guys, regret and that feeling that I just described in that story, if I were to be really open and honest with all of you, it's my personal greatest fear. Let me take a seat on our rock here at the top. It's my greatest fear. It's driven me as far back as I can remember. I remember a line from an old movie, A Tale of the Bronx, or A Bronx Tale, if you remember. It wasn't a super popular one, but was a great one. And I won't go into the whole setup there, but there's a line in there where the kid is, talking to, Sonny, a mentor, and his dad, and they're having a conversation, and there's a line, and I won't get it right, but there's a line that basically says, no, you can't blame, someone that's dumb or someone that's stupid. They don't know better. But someone that knows better, there's nothing in life worse than wasted talent. And that line, wasted talent, right? Wasted time. And time is really all we have. So to me, wasted time and wasted talent is a wasted life. You guys, that'd be my number one fear. My number one fear is to be given certain talents or gifts from our Maker. We all have been given, right? None of us is any different than any one of us. We all have different gifts and different talents and different strengths, but every single one of us has been given certain gifts and strengths that are our own, certain things that make us us, certain things that we were created for, certain things, right, that we are able to bring and give and contribute. We all have those. Different people, different talents, but talents one alike. And I couldn't imagine being given all of that for a purpose or for a reason and not using them. Being given all of that and spend the majority of our time in a different direction, not putting our livelihood in a direction we were created for, we were meant to. Wasted time, wasted talent. At the end of the day, if we don't go in that direction, isn't that a wasted life? And that's all we have. And you guys, that fear of mine has driven me, right? That fear of a regret, that fear, right, of meeting the Maker and getting that list one day and having that moment. I couldn't imagine, right? If that list is close to the life you lived, I think that would be heaven. But if that list is far away from what you created for, well, I think that would be hell. Spending the rest of your eternity, whatever that means, with a regret of what could have been or should have been or what was meant to. That would be a living hell. You guys, the thing about regret as a feeling or emotion, I've been digging into some studies on it. Matter of fact, there's an author, Daniel Pink, who's done a great job collecting a lot of studies and background and thinking on the power of regret. He has a book out there, and a lot of studies show that it's actually one of the most common feelings. Matter of fact, it's the second most common feeling in some of the studies that are out there on the power of regret, behind only love. Love being number one, regret being number two, which says a lot when you think about how many feelings and emotions we have and we experience, the power of regret being the second most common thing people they feel with. You can look at your own life, think about how often do you have that emotion or feeling of regret, right? Is that a monthly thing? Is that a weekly thing? Is that a daily thing? Is that a multiple times of a day thing? And regret can help us, or regret can hinder us, right? And that's the power of the conversation. And when you peel back the onion, you think about, well, why do we have this emotion, right? How does regret work, right? I always ask that question, like, why? I try to understand, where does this even come from? Why are we built with this muscle when it can be so crippling? And, you break it down and you think regret as an emotion is really an outcome of two amazing abilities that every single one of us have. And they're pretty remarkable abilities if you think about it. The first amazing ability that leads to regret is our ability to time travel in our own mind. And what I mean by time travel is our ability with our own thoughts to go into the past, right, at any point, or go into the future at any point. Don't think you can't time travel. How often do you spend, right, you're up here, right, in between your own ears, going into events of the past, right, or carrying yourself into potential events of the future, time traveling in your own mind? An amazing ability, the first. And the second, a remarkable ability to write a new story or create a new story. And those two things, our ability to go into the past and look at a circumstance and then create a new story of what could have been or should have been or might have been, leads to a regret in many times. And you look at those things and you put them together, you have the ability to really write one or two stories. We'll call it a at least story or a if only story. And the difference between an at least story and an if only story is the difference between if a regret is going to hold you down or if an experience is going to propel you forward. You see, an if only story carries with it a lot of weight, a lot of baggage, a lot of negative energy, a lot of regret. An at least story is a different frame. It's a perspective that can grab a lesson and carry it forward. And I'll give you an example of a study that was done on Olympians, a large group of Olympians, and they studied a group of Olympians across different activities and sports, and they looked at the medalists, the gold and the silver and the bronze medalists. And they had conversations with medalists after that they won, and they listened to their story for those words, the at least or the if only. And if I were just to ask you, without getting into the study, how you think people felt having been a gold medalist, how do you think they would have felt in that moment, right? Number 1 in the world. How about a silver medalist, right? Number 2 in the world. How about a bronze medalist? Number 3 in the world. If I were to ask you which one of those groups, right, would have the most common regret, which one would you think it was? Well, it's interesting because it was actually silver medalists that had the most regret in the study. Because silver medalists spent their time going back to that moment, replaying in their mind and having if only conversations. If only I had been a little bit more, a little bit further, I would have been number 1 in the world. If only. But the bronze medalists had more at least conversations. Well, at least I got into 3rd, at least I got the medal. And you guys, so often we go back and we have those conversations in our life, right? If only conversations or at least conversations. And you got to realize that every decision you ever made in your past, you made given the circumstances you had at the time, right? And so often we have mantras of, hey, live life with no regrets. And, I think what that means is we all know we can't change things. We shouldn't put energy into things we can't control. One of the things that I think is important is in any given moment of decision, there's so many factors at that time that you don't realize you're taking in. So many of us, we make the best decisions we can make given the circumstances we have at that time. And so often when we try and time travel back to the past, we forget about all the circumstances around that led to that decision. So you got to realize we make the best decisions we make with what we have at the time. And you can't sit down there and create stories in your mind of, well, what if this could have happened, right? And carry that weight of regret. We got to take all of that and realize that we got to have an at least conversation, at least conversations of at least, right? What can we learn from that? What can we take forward from that? How can that propel us forward? And you guys, the reality is regret can be a weight that holds us back, or regret can be a power that pushes us forward. How can it be a power that pushes it forward? Well, if we have that emotion, we can reflect and realize, wow, we can learn from experiences and make shifts or changes, right, in the future, so we don't make those same decisions again. It can be a powerful servant, right, to us, those feelings, as long as we use them to make a shift forward. Matter of fact, I'll describe the shift that I think we need to make like this. You can't look back in the past and be like, man, at the end of the day, every single action, every single decision we pay for, right? Every single action, every single decision. It's not that we pay for. That would constantly be looking backwards and creating a new story of how it's going to lead you in a negative direction. It's not about every single thing in our past we can pay for. It's every single thing in our past, every moment, every decision, every lesson, every person, every relationship can be a payoff. And you guys, it can be a payoff if we look back and we have at least conversations. If we look back and say, what can we learn from these conversations? If we look back and let go of the guilt and the weight and say, you know what, I made the best decision I could make at that time in the circumstances that I have, better or worse, whether I change it or not. It's gotten me to where I am. It's allowed me to become who I am. It's given me the fortitude and resilience that I have today. And how can I carry all of that and use it not to pay for, but to pay off in the future and apply it to the direction that I'm destined and committed to go. And you guys, if we look at it like that everything is a payoff, and maybe not in this moment, but in a moment waiting for you in the future, that at least, right, you were able to get to where you are today and have what you have today and be who you are today. It's all set a foundation for where we're going, guys, and all of that can be a powerful, powerful shift. That can move all of us toward that meant to. Can move all of us toward, at the end of the day, when we're staring at that list, when we're having that conversation, that list of what was meant to be is the list that we ended up living. It can move us in that direction. So let's not get stuck in our past. Let's not get stuck in time traveling and creating different stories that aren't attached to the circumstances that we were in at that time. Let's not get stuck in the past with, if only conversations. And let's make those shifts and realize that all of that, guys, it's not about paying for, it's about paying off and using them to propel us to live that list, to pursue our potential, right? To go and be who we were meant to be. So at the end of the day, if we ever do end up having that conversation, we can sit down there and say, wow, this is a heaven, and not be stuck in a perpetual hell. Give you one more view from the top, guys. Beautiful day, sun is out. Summer is here in Southern California. Hope summer was off to an amazing start for all of you. I know today's conversation was a little heavy, but I think if you get the message and make the shift, right? It's something that can let go of the weight of regret of the past and use it as a fuel to propel us, right, to a positive direction in our future. Hey, let me know what you think of today's conversation. If you have thoughts or perspectives, drop them below. Make sure you go stop by the podcast and subscribe. And hey, leave some reviews. I read every single one of them. If there's a message that's resonated, go leave a review. That helps. I appreciate it. It makes me smile. Inspires me to continue these conversations with all of you. Until the next time we walk together, let's make the shifts. No more regret in our life. Just fuel to move